Good morning, everyone. June 5th, 3 short weeks ago, Los Angeles was calm. Angelenos were going about work, school, and families were preparing for graduation events. The next day, the federal government decided to disrupt our city and began a series of immigration raids, arresting hundreds of people, many for dubious reasons, beginning what I will call an all-out assault on Los Angeles. First the raids, then randomly grabbing people off the streets, chasing Angelenos through parking lots, sending in federalized troops to stand idle, protecting 2 buildings, and having U.S. Marines trained to fight the enemy abroad, stationed here and caravanning around town, intimidating Angelenos, creating a sense of fear and terror in our city, families missing graduations, people afraid to go to work and school, businesses unable to open, and inflicting a serious blow to our local economy. And in addition to that, initiating investigations led by Republicans in Congress, the Secretary of Transportation, requesting documents and communications with the implication that the mayor's office and the city was either negligent or complicit in the protests and the vandalism that was falsely portrayed as citywide riots, and now filing a lawsuit against the city. Again, this is essentially an all-out assault against Los Angeles. The lawsuit is an attempt to overturn the will of the city, calling for a halt to long-standing policy to protect immigrant Angelenos. We are a city of immigrants who have had policies in place for decades. Ironically, originally, the law was for public safety, so the newly arrived immigrant population that was being preyed on by criminals would feel safe in reporting crimes to law enforcement. As the city attorney said yesterday, our city remains committed to standing up for our constitutional rights and the rights of our residents. We will defend our ordinance and continue to defend policies that reflect the long-standing values of our city. We know that Los Angeles is the test case, and we will stand strong. And we do so because the people snatched off city streets and chased through parking lots are our coworkers, our neighbors, our family members, and they are Angelenos. Let me be clear, I personally won't be intimidated by these tactics. We will not be intimidated by these tactics. I will always protect Angelenos against the unwarranted and cruel actions of this administration. We know, as I said before, that our city is being used as a test case for an extremist agenda, but LA will stand strong and we will stand together. We are a city of diversity, of labor, of business, of faith, of community, of creativity, of success. We are a proud American city, and we will stand united. With that, let me introduce Ernesto Medrano, Executive Secretary of the Los Angeles and Orange County Building Trades.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Good morning, everyone. We represent over 160,000 hardworking construction workers across Southern California. The hardworking people that get up before dawn to build this city. Today, I am here because our members and job sites have been turned into targets. Not because of wrongdoing, but because of assumptions, because of profiling, because of fear. What's happening right now goes beyond politics. It cuts into the foundation of fairness, due process, and respect for work. We cannot stay silent about it. The trades include people from all walks of life. Those who vote red, those who vote blue, and some of whom may not even vote at all. But at the end of the day, in the labor movement, we believe in something bigger, and that is solidarity. Brotherhood, sisterhood. We protect each other, we fight for each other. And right now, our members, their families, and our workplaces are being targeted. Last week, We saw ICE agents show up at a public works job site. These are union job sites, city-funded job sites. These are places where Los Angeles is being rebuilt, the streets, their sidewalks, and other types of infrastructure. These workers were profiled simply because of how they look and where they work. That is not law enforcement, that is intimidation. When ICE storms in without cause, it sends a chilling message to every worker, documented or not, U.S. citizen also, that your rights don't matter what it says. But they do matter. Their rights do matter. Due process does matter. And the Constitution does matter. No one should be assumed guilty just because they're brown and wearing a hard hat. This lawsuit is a political stunt disguised as public safety. But the real consequence is fear. Fear that keeps workers from showing up, that delays public projects, that weakens our economy. Even Republican state lawmakers here in California have called for a change in tactics. They know that indiscriminate raids hurt communities and do nothing actually to make us any safer. This isn't about being red or being blue. This is about standing up for the people that make the city move. People who believe in a fair shot, a fair wage, and a fair day's work without fear. Thank you.
The political stunt has profound economic consequences. There are entire sectors of our economy that are dependent on immigrant labor. I want to introduce Frederick Nielsen, principal with Steinberg and Hart.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm with Steinberg Hart, and we daily are reminded about the struggle to get permits and approvals for much-needed housing in the city. And this action is going to further delay much-needed housing. I have colleagues from all scales of firms, from small landscaping firms to larger architecture firms like ours, where labor is feared to go into work. They're causing a lot of angst and causing bad morale in construction. And we just need to stop this, and we have go on with much needed housing in the city. Thank you.
The political stunt with economic consequences is also a moral issue. I recount the wives that I met right after Father's Day whose husbands did not come home, and they had to explain to their children where were their fathers, when would they see them again. This inflicts lifelong trauma on the children. I'd like to introduce Reverend Zachary Hoover with LA Voice.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor Bass, for the opportunity to stand together strong for the city that we all love. I love Los Angeles, raising my son here, happy to do so. In the streets in recent weeks in our nonviolent protest, one song that we have been singing is one that comes from both Christian and Hebrew scriptures. Lord, prepare me to be a sanctuary. The call is a moral call. It's a call that asks all of us to not only make rooms in our own hearts for God, but doing so by always being welcoming to others, whether they come from a different neighborhood, a different religion, a different race, a different country, whatever it might be. That's the moral calling that we have. And frankly, that's a calling that we have seen alive in our country for many years in many different ways as we've continued to expand welcome to people, not just in Los Angeles, but across the United States. What does sanctuary mean besides this? That families and children feel safe, that workers feel safe, that people know that if they need to report a crime, they can, that people are free to work, worship, and play without fear. This is what we want for not just Los Angeles, but the nation as a whole. In recent weeks, from when I showed up with Raquel Roman was already there, when we showed up and saw a family that had been, whose car had been hit by masked federal agents, flashbanged with a toddler and a child inside. And the man that they removed was a U.S. citizen. This is what is happening in Los Angeles. Or Job, whom we've seen on the news recently, who was detained at the Home Depot, simply for being there, doing his job. He's a U.S. citizen, detained for 36 hours by the federal agents. Or the countless other stories we've heard. One of our member congregations, we have 100 member congregations we work with across the county. One of them has 14 families that have a family member, a long-term resident of this country, a worker, a churchgoer who have been detained, and those families are struggling. There's a 4-year-old who keeps asking, "Where's my daddy?" And they cannot explain to him where his father is. Today, we're also faced with the moral failure of this big bill. This bill that comes from the mouths of people saying they want to protect families in our country, but in fact, they are ripping away health care from people who need it most, reducing food assistance for our neighbors and our families and our friends, and saying that they're doing it for the good of our country, taking away school funding. And guess where those cuts are going? To bring federal agents into Los Angeles to tear our families apart. So miss me with the "I'm protecting families" thing. That's not what's happening here. We expect Americans, we invite you wherever you are in this country. If you don't like what you're hearing about what's happening right now, you have to make your voices heard. And in particular, I want to speak to my fellow faith leaders, be you Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Sikh, whatever tradition you come from. We need you to stand up and talk about what's going on. Tell the truth about what's happening in our country right now. Thank you.
The political stunt with economic consequences challenges the moral values of this nation, but not the values of Los Angeles, because we will stand strong. Rabbi Sharon Brous of ECAR.
Good morning, folks, and thank you so much to Mayor Bass for your leadership in this moment. We are here today not only as elected officials and faith leaders and community leaders, but also as neighbors, as friends, and as human beings. In the book of Genesis, we read of the ancient cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, contrary to common misinterpretation, the sin of Sodom was not some kind of sexual deviance. Sodom and Gomorrah, our rabbis tell us, were abundant in natural resources. These were blooming oases in the middle of the desert. But that natural abundance fueled a spirit of scarcity among the city's inhabitants, who sought to safeguard their riches. And so what did they do? They forcibly removed foreigners from the land. They sealed off their borders. No one would deprive them of what was rightfully theirs. In Sodom and Gomorrah, the people's worst inclinations were propped up by a legal system that made a mockery of justice. Lawmakers passed zero-tolerance policies that meted out torture to anyone who offered sanctuary to a struggling neighbor. This was a cynical effort to quash human goodness and to fuel a culture of distrust, betrayal, and callousness. And it is as old as the Hebrew Bible. These past few weeks, we have witnessed these same behaviors here in our city, in our homes, in our workplaces, in our churches, in our graduation ceremonies. People are afraid to go to work. Children fear that their parents might not come home. The harshness, the physical and the emotional violence inflicted in these raids and detentions shocks the conscience. We will not stand back and watch as our families and our neighborhoods and our city and our country is torn apart. Here in Los Angeles, we will always choose to respond to cruelty and callousness with courage, to respond to hatred with love. We will not stay silent in the face of this outrage. We will continue to stand in moral protest against a system that treats human beings as disposable, as political props. There is no righteousness in laws and policies that break families and shatter lives. We will not become Sodom. Instead, we will continue to be a city that shelters and protects and uplifts. A city that remembers that the measure of our humanity is how we treat those who are most vulnerable. Today, we hear the cry, and we will rise with courage, and we will continue to protect one another with love. Thank you so much.
We can open up up for questions now, and I'll ask Deputy Mayor to lead that.
Start right here, and then we'll go to Dave.
Mayor Baskerville with NBCLA. My question is two-part. First, can you explicitly say how the city is responding to this lawsuit, and in turn, how the city is going to be able to afford to respond to it? Last week, the city council did announce that we're in a fiscal emergency.
That's right.
A lot of debt.
That's right.
The Trump administration threatened to pull a lot of
Yeah.
funding during the Palisades fire.
So,
How does the cost of this weigh with the policy? Is there any chance that this policy could be revoked if it means that
Let-
we don't get any more funding?
let me just say that, first of all, you're raising a very, very important issue in terms of the fiscal impact. And the fiscal impact began on June 6th when the raid started. Because in the week after that, we spent $30 million on LAPD overtime and security-related expenses. $30 million that was unnecessary. You're asking how we're responding to the lawsuit. You know we just received a lawsuit yesterday. So attorneys are reviewing it. But it's still the same point. It's going to cost a lot of resources to defend the city in the lawsuit. But I also mentioned that it's not just the lawsuit. It's also the inquiries from the Government Oversight and Reform Committee in the House, the Secretary of Transportation. And what they are essentially doing is trying to lay a foundation. There was some complicity with the city government, and the protests that took place, especially in terms of the vandalism, which is ridiculous.
A follow-up question from that. Should the federal government, should the Trump administration withdraw Los Angeles federal funding?
Of course not. What the federal government should do is stay in Washington and remove the troops and do not have ICE raids in our city. That's what the federal government should do. Next.
Next question to Dave, and then to Macy.
So, hi. The city council is scheduled to vote today to ask the city attorney to make suing the Trump administration a top priority over these immigration raids. A couple of their council members have said they want specifically to have the city sue to protect the Fourth Amendment rights of people living in Los Angeles. Do you support that? And where do you see your role in this lawsuit that is being prepared?
Well, first of all, I'm named in the lawsuit, so that is my role. They have determined my role. In terms of the actions that the city council is taking today, they're taking them today. So I have not had an opportunity to review what they're doing. I definitely support the city attorney participating in defending us and then in other lawsuits. For example, and it's been reported over and over again, we don't know who these masked men are. They're riding up and down the street, pulling people off the street, completely masked, wearing very dubious uniforms, not showing their ID. And so there is absolutely a push to allow to have that stop. Next.
Macy, and then Craig.
Hi, Mayor. Question for you. I spoke with Bill Assembly yesterday, and he said people are being swept up because we have to cast a broader net. That's because of California's policies. If the mayor didn't like it, she should have changed the law when she was in Congress, but she didn't do that.
Well, I'm not even sure that's worth responding to. But anyway, I will tell you that in the 12 years I spent in Congress, I fought every year for comprehensive immigration reform and was very involved during family separation and authored my own legislation that unfortunately did not pass because of the Republican control of the Senate. So anyway, that's my response to that.
Craig, and then Francine.
Mayor, I'd like to know, has LAPD changed its policy at all in responding to, but oftentimes we're understanding sort of 911 calls reporting abduction when people are being taken away by people who appear to be federal agents.
Yeah,
And so LAPD shows up.
right.
And do they have a procedure
No,
to verify if this is
I understand. Fortunately, or unfortunately, that's only happened once. What you're referring to is what people saw as a kidnapping. And they called 911, and when the police showed up, they saw it was an immigration action, which again creates chaos and confusion. Because how did they know what?
How did they know it was a legit immigration?
Well, they knew it was an immigration action. Legit is another question up for debate. But when they got there, they saw people in the uniforms, and they saw them as federal agents. Beyond that, I don't know that. I don't know if they saw IDs. You know, sometimes they do have uniforms that say Custom Border Patrol. Oftentimes they have uniforms that say things like police that look like they bought online. So it just depends on what the uniforms were that day, if there were.
We're going Francine and then Lila.
Mayor Bass? Hi, Francine from the Christian Science Monitor. Nice to see you again. Crises can sometimes yield opportunities for negotiation or common ground or behind-the-scenes work. I'm wondering if you're still in touch with the administration during this period, and do you see any opportunity for common ground or some kind of compromise at this time?
I'll tell you, the only opportunity I want to see is for those individuals to be returned to their families, for those fathers and mothers to return home. That's the opportunity I want to see.
I'm going to go Lila and then down in front.
Yeah, that was my question too. Under what conditions would the city ever comply and compromise so there can be peace?
Well, I think that that is an interesting question because I'm not sure that the administration wants us to. I think they want the chaos. I think we're the petri dish for the nation. Basically, if the public will tolerate the federal seizure of state power, which is what they did in terms of taking the power away from Governor Newsom around the troops, whether or not, let's see, how far can we push the envelope? Will the American public tolerate Marines driving up and down the street?
Well, aren't you conflating immigration with the immigrants with undocumented?
They are absolutely. Well, I mean, we know it's not just people who are undocumented. We know that people who had their annual immigration check, they are here legally, they have papers, they're required to report in to immigration once a year. They show up and they get detained. We know that U.S. citizens have been detained. So it's basically indiscriminate. It's a wide net they have cast in order to meet Stephen Miller's quota of 3,000 people a day being detained around the nation. And I don't know how the other cities are faring, but I will tell you that mayors across the country are very concerned. I've been on Zoom calls with over 100 mayors looking at what is happening in LA. This is the test case, and we're going to pass the test.
Down in front and then right here with the gray hoodie. We're going to go down in front and then place to protect.
Go ahead.
Mayor Bass, Indianapolis Spectrum, were you surprised to see to see that this lawsuit against the city came out yesterday? And is there any risk that the city would stop being a sanctuary city?
Well, let me just tell you, at this point, I'm kind of not surprised about anything coming out of the administration that continues to disrupt our city.
Right here in the gray hoodie and then in the blue.
Mayor Bass, do you have any plans in place to protect the city's financial stability in case federal funding is pulled?
Well, that is something that we absolutely have to look at, and we are going to be doing a deep analysis to see how we would respond. What would the impact be if federal funding was pulled? But you can't govern the city that way. We have to function and move forward and do the best that we can given these circumstances. The irony is that we received a lot of help in the beginning with the fires, and then all of a sudden it was a dramatic change.
Right here in the blue. And then last question.
So my question about that will be very basic. Federal government claimed that the raid against you, but the government of the state tried to protect the rights of the immigrants. And have there any maybe mutual point to solve this problem in general? It's my first question. And then we'll follow second.
Well, I'll just say I'm not sure they want it solved. There has to be two parties. We would like it to be solved. We would like for the ICE raids to stop. We would like for the array of federal officials or civilians dressed as federal officials to go home.
And my second question, two times I tried in this downtown LA cover the operation of ICE in the street. But they didn't give me permission. Is it possible because the street, the downtown LA belong to our administration, but the ICE didn't give the journalists to cover the operation?
I don't know who are you referring to didn't give you permission? The people doing the raid?
No, the ICE service.
Right.
They didn't give us permission to cover
Well, they probably don't want it to be covered because they don't want it to be seen. I mean, I can't answer for why ICE did what they did or didn't do, but it would make sense to me. I think that they're trying to masquerade this whole situation. And remember now, this started talking about hardened criminals, drug dealers, gang members, and I'm just hard pressed to see the lady who wasn't even 5 feet tall, the isolated street vendor who was selling fruit, as a dangerous criminal, or the parents who were trying to attend graduation, or the day laborers at Home Depot being chased through parking lots. And by the way, when the secretary did her press conference where Senator Padilla was disrespected and thrown to the floor, she did a slideshow of the hardened criminals, and there were 4. We know that the vast majority of people that have been detained and arrested have no criminal history at all. You're welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Bass. My question is 2 parts. Would you be willing to have a sit-down meeting with ICE or DHS? And because Hogan says that they wouldn't be sending ICE out into communities if you were handing criminal illegals over at jails, is there a deal to be made?
I don't know if there's a deal to be made. Like I told you, the deal that needs to be made is for them to go home. Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.